know a lot of good dialogue is happening individually, but we are really focused for our meeting this afternoon. As everyone takes their seats, we just want to make sure that you all have signed in. If you haven't, we have a sign-in sheet at the back tables. You can either do that now or we can wait until the break. My name is Dorothy May. I am with the Alabama Digital Expansion Division of ADECA. I'm glad to be here with you all this afternoon. Just a few housekeeping things. Again, sign-in sheets in the back along with copies of the presentations and the handouts are there for you to take. And then we would like to thank Commissioner Laura Cobb at Sweet Southern Market for the refreshments this afternoon. Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to my colleague Jack Burbridge with CTC Technology.
Thanks, Dorothy. Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting us here at this beautiful facility in the county. I learned how to pronounce it this morning, and I'm not from Alabama, as you might have guessed, but I feel like I'm more and more not just a welcome visitor, but I've been here a few times, and I've been with Dorothy on a bunch of these visits to the various counties around the state. So I've learned a lot. It's really great to be here. We are also joined by our federal representative, Wade from NTIA, the NPO. So I'm going to go over a few things here. And then I'm going to give a little presentation and then open it up for questions. We've invited internet service providers here in the room to have a chance to talk about your services as well. And hopefully we'll have a nice, robust discussion and hopefully be able to answer your questions as they come up. First part of the agenda is the technology overview. Pretty brief, just basic terms. That will help us when we're talking about the federal funds and the federal programs, what we mean when we talk about broadband speeds, unserved, underserved, those kind of things. And a little bit about technology, although I can see most everybody's knowledgeable. Talk a little bit about the technical assistance program, why we're here today, what this means to the county, and how it fits into the overall planning that the state has to do in order to get the money to build the networks. And then the funding and programmatic opportunities for those broadband infrastructure programs that are already underway in the state. Federal programs, the state program, the new federal funds through the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, or BEAD program, and Digital Equity and Opportunity grants programs. I think maybe we should just do a really quick introduction, just your name and organization, and maybe briefly what brings you here today. I will start all the way in the back. Would you care to start out?
I'm Stacey Bowen. I'm the Financial Support Supervisor at the County BHR office. I supervise food stamps and the job programs.
Thank you for being here. One of your counterpart in county was in the morning session.
Bobby Brown, Mayor Wood.
Thank you.
Bobby Brown, Mayor Head.
Brianna Walker, Community Development with Alabama Power for Clay, Cleburne, and Randolph County.
Alabama Power, Lindsay Smith. Alabama Power Connectivity Marketing.
Mark Truitt, Concerned Citizen.
Terry Hendricks, Cleburne County Commissioner.
Laura Cobb, Cleburne County Commissioner, District 1.
Emmett Owen, County Commissioner, District 2.
Roger Hill, Commissioner, District 4.
And with my speaker to the
Kevin Bolton, high-speed country internet. We're a wireless internet service provider for Cleburne and Randolph.
Anthony Atkinson, Bowman.
And Wade Perry, Federal Program Officer for the BEAD program, which I'll be learning some more about here today.
I want to apologize too. I stepped in front of you. You had a thing that you were trying to get. I apologize. That I feel better. All right, so really quickly, speed versus storage. When we talk about megabits per second, we're talking about the speed at which we're accessing data over the internet. So the broadband speed as defined by the FCC, or Federal Communications Commission, is 25 megabits per second download or being taken down from the internet, 3 megabits per second upload. So that is considered an asymmetrical speed. And it sort of, the background on that is that a few years ago, what was considered broadband was 4 megabits per second over 1 megabits per second. So just 5 years ago. So there was a recognition on the federal government that the increase in need for internet, for speed on the internet is growing, but it's not nearly enough, and we'll get into that. Gigabyte or megabyte or byte is just a term for storage. I have 15 gigabytes of data on my Google Drive. Next one. So for the broadband definition here, a family of 4 is already pressing that, and that assumes a connection that they have access to the internet. If they do, and they're able to use it, they're already pressing what's considered broadband today. Right? Netflix, it's a very large download speed. There's no real upload, but when you're trying to do a video call, you have a telehealth appointment with the doctor, or you're doing a Zoom call, that's equal up and down. So there's a need for upload speeds at a greater degree nowadays than maybe a few years ago. And then all of that is a small percentage of what's really pushing applications, higher bandwidth applications that seem futuristic but really aren't, right? Because there's no vacuum. And we live in a market society, and these things are being pushed and people want them. So the demand is always pressing for greater speeds. The FCC's definition of broadband, when the pandemic hit and a lot of funding came out of the federal government, the ARPA, or American Rescue Plan Act, and the more recent Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or bipartisan infrastructure law, set a higher standard for projects or for investments for infrastructure for broadband, where those services had to meet a standard of 100 over 20. So it's looking a few years in advance. It's also putting a stress or an emphasis on fiber-based projects where that's at all possible, because fiber has longevity. It's the most future-proof technology that we have, and it has the highest capacity, so the highest ceiling in terms of speed. Alabama has set a higher standard of 100 over 100 for symmetrical service for infrastructure projects that it funds through ADECA. So, for example, the Alabama Broadband Accessibility Fund, right, is ABAF, sets this 100 over 100 as a standard. So Alabama is looking even further than this on this. This gives you a picture of what thematically or schematically what the internet looks like. Those connections on the left, it's like your interstate the interstate highway system, ultra high speed, high capacity networks, very high fiber strand counts, very high honking electronics that are pushing in excess of 100 gigabits per second or multiple 100 gig. And then this middle mile network that includes connectivity through fiber to community anchor institutions, like this facility probably, your hospitals, government locations, schools, libraries, public housing sites, community centers are all considered community anchors and are typically served in this middle mile. And then to the last mile, for the wireline, you can be a fiber connection to the home directly, can be a fiber handoff to a coaxial cable service to the home. And then you have the DSL copper connection over the telephone line split. It all goes back to fiber at some point. On the wireless side, of course, you have the fixed wireless deployments from your towers to the homes and your cellular networks. Everything's served by fiber. So every wireless connection has a wire, it goes back to wire. And I mentioned fiber is not just the standard at the endpoint, but is really the network that on the backside. Optic strands, about as thin as the hair on your head, and it bundled very, I want to say just really super fast, right? So limited only by the electronics. And I mentioned the other technologies. Let's see. I think we can go on to the next slide because this gives an idea of how these are deployed. So predominantly deployed in most markets, cable service, still DSL. Don't think there's any better one. And then on the wireless side, 4G fixed wireless, more of a newer service, 5G fixed wireless services, and you have the mobile and satellite services. Fiber in some markets, but as you can see, a high upside. So that arrow probably goes down to the wall over there, limited again by electronics only. And anything else I need to say? No, I think that covers it. In terms of time, again, starting with dial-up, moving to DSL, cable modem, and then fiber to the premises. And I live in Maryland, but I remember the dial-up connection that I had. I was really excited when I could use the phone and the internet at the same time with DSL. And Verizon came around and they were saying they were going to have this fiber service that they were doing. And we signed up for it. And I had that for a long time, and then I called them one day and I said, I think I need to upgrade. And they said, well, we don't even know how much you were getting back then. I think it was like 10 megabits per second over 3, and I got an upgrade. So anyhow, that's I can see that progression over time. So in Alabama, this is a great resource. Most of y'all are probably familiar with it. You can go to this map and put in an address and see what service, according to the map and the information that the state has from providers, whether that address is served and at what level it is served. There are different tiers that you can gauge by. I think the default is 100/20, and see if it's, if you are getting 25/3 or higher. You can see if it's served via the different technologies. There was one thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about the speeds or the definitions of broadband. So I mentioned that 25/3, which is the FCC's definition of broadband. Any address that is not capable of receiving service at that level is considered unserved. So if you have the DSL service and your speed, is not at that, you are unserved. If you are above 25/3 but below 100/20, so maybe you have a higher DSL service, you are underserved according to the federal programs that we're going to talk about in a minute. And so I just wanted to make sure that that distinction was made. So this map is a great resource. A couple of additional facts about this. Currently being updated, so in a few weeks the information on there will be updated with new data from service providers, greater degree of accuracy. It's an iterative process. The state developed this map a couple of years ago. Really one of the vanguard states in the country to do so. Was in a position to put in a challenge to the FCCs. The FCC has a nationwide map, a nationwide broadband map that is the authoritative map, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a few slides down. But think about the Alabama map. Think about the federal funds that are coming. The basis for how much funding is going to come to the state is going to be based on the number of unserved addresses in that state. And an unserved address is going to be based on what the FCC's map says is an unserved address. So, like the Alabama map, you can go to the FCC map, enter an address, and see if that location is served or not. Yes?
Last question.
Well, I'd like, if you can hold it till the end, yes, but if not, you be the gauge, but if you can hold on.
One thing I was going to ask is, the funds that are coming to Alabama, are you saying it's going to the white area and not the blue area, or are you saying everybody's going to get some?
Yeah, I think I can answer that now, and you'll get better nuanced answer. It is going to go to unserved locations. Now, the one thing about this map is that if you see a blue area here, that is a percentage of addresses in that area are served. Doesn't mean every address in that area is served.
So our county doesn't have our
There's a lot of white space, yes, in this county. That's right. So you're going to see a lot of unserved dots. You're going to see a lot of red dots when you zoom into that map. And those dots are priority 1 for the new federal funds that are coming through. Also has overlays for existing projects or planned projects through the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund from FCC, the Reconnect program through Department of, we can go on, maybe we should go back. I got ahead of myself, I thought we were.
You want which one?
Let's go back to the map just for a second. Here we go, yes. Yes, so it has overlays for existing projects and planned projects, I think. So you can see if there is not service at a location, but it's part of a project that's underway, then you can get an idea of services on its way there. And I mentioned that the update is going on. That covers it. Is there anything else on the map that? Okay. So we talked.
But I've got a question. On that map, does it show, because there's all over the county, running fiber all over the county, and there's orange pipe sticking up all over the county. So even though so it's just showing customers that can afford it, because a lot of people in our county, there's a lot of fiber running around. Is it gonna show where it's been run already, based on what we're gonna do now? And, or if we need more providers for the county, will we have better competition? Because I think there's only like the school, the mountain center, and the jail is the only one that can even afford the fiber in the county now. But they run cable all over the place. So, is that right?
I can answer it.
You want to, okay.
A lot of that's what they call long haul fiber.
Right.
So, you know, people are like, well, they cut fiber line right down in front of my house, but I can't get fiber. Because the government has prepaid for a lot of that to connect to schools.
Yeah.
So it's not accessible because it's long haul fiber.
So, or that middle mile, so really.
So you're talking about like running that to the rest area,
Yeah, you
White
got that
station.
running down all the way, I mean, you've seen them
yeah,
cut through fiber. A lot of that's all long haul fiber. It's unfortunately, it is dedicated to the schools or to the public.
government.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's that question.
So your point was that you see fiber running,
Yeah,
but you don't see
It's
how
not
where it's
connected.
connected
Right.
to.
Right. And this is, I just put this back up so we can briefly look at it. The long haul fiber is what connects the larger cities, it's the interstate system to us as an analogy. The middle mile fiber is what connects the community anchor institutions, the hospitals, the school, the jail, the prisons, those kind of things, libraries, public facilities. What we're talking about is this last mile. That's
Okay.
from your front door to your front door and down the street.
Right.
So that's what these funds are dedicated to, is serving the unserved. The ones that are not served, don't have any service, or less than 25/3. That's the first dedication of funds, is to those customers.
When y'all break this down, y'all gonna break it down into cities and counties, or y'all gonna have your own map with different areas, like maybe half of Cleveland County, but not all of Cleveland County, how y'all gonna do that?
It will be an entire county profile by
So it's
county.
gonna be counties and cities.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you mean by project, when projects are defined? Do you look at projects, counties and actual boundary areas as well?
No, they're not natural boundary areas as far as we're only gonna do this within this county. It's what the internet service provider proposes. They have a proposed project area that may cover 2 or 3 counties or just 1 county. But those are submitted to us, and then we use that to be able to determine where the plan is.
Are you gonna be able to tell us who our supposed providers gonna be?
Well, that's for the internet service providers to come, and they're the ones that are gonna present those projects. Yes, we don't select them. They come to us, they look at the map, they say what's unserved, and they use that to determine where to go with their future builds.
And then for the, so we'll talk about the current programs, and then for the new funding that we're in the planning phase for now, that program from the state hasn't been developed yet. So the state will develop a grant program for providers to apply to serve the addresses, the project areas in the state for those unserved locations.
So the county government, not really gonna have to say anything. It's gonna be between the state and the provider.
No, as a part of it, yes, as a part of it. So the county programs will brought back to the county, and the ISPs will propose projects within that county based on the information that we gather from these community meetings and through the telephone survey that you all will learn about a little bit later on. That information is put into the county profiles to roll up and say this is what the county needs are, this is what they have and don't have, and what we think is best to suit the county within that profile will be developed. And Jack's going to talk about the profile as well.
What concerns me is a lot of the providers looking at it as, I can service this area and get 200 people, or I can go over here to this rural area and I can get 100 people. They're going to number more to this 200 people versus this 100.
So,
And you know, that's.
Because it's about ROI. It's about ROI for the big corporations.
But that's why, you know, we're looking at the government trying to help in these areas where everyone gets the service. It's not just because you're getting 200 over here versus 100, and you're leaving this 100 that's still sitting out there.
I'd like you to hold that thought like to hold that concern. That is a real concern. And I'd also like to hold the question about what can the county do? What level of influence do you have?
If it's going to be strictly a business decision, of course, the company's going to know where they make most money. But if this is government money, then why can't we get out here to these folks that will never get it without government help?
Yes, hold those thoughts.
It's
We're
kind of like
gonna-
our water projects. Our water projects are based on low income,
Yep.
and we should be pretty.
We're going to get to it, yes. All right, so
We see our concern.
I'm gonna, yes, no, I hear you, and we will, I do plan to address those. So I'm gonna take a little side visit here. So we talked about the broadband infrastructure and the importance of it, and that is the need, right? That's it. Without that, you can't do anything else. But there will be, that need will be addressed, and as it's addressed, there are other needs in order to use the internet. You need to be able to have access to inclusive content or accessible content. You need devices, and people need to know how to use those devices. They need to be able to need to be able to secure my private data and feel secure when I'm on the internet. And I need to have the skills to do all of the things that I need to do, whether it's health, telehealth, work, school for the kids, or school for myself if I want to, continue on remotely. So this is also an area that you'll see funding from the federal government to the states. Okay. Now, to start to address the question on county influence, this technical assistance program initiated last year through the ADECA received $1 million grant from the Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration to provide information and to collect information from counties and set up this model of the county profile as a tool that the funding came out of the pandemic where the Department of Commerce saw that there was a great need. Pandemic hit suddenly, there was a need for everybody to go online, for work, for school, for health. Businesses were shutting down, all sorts of things were happening. How does the community respond to that? How can we prepare to address that future resilience? So first step was understanding what the problems or the needs, the underlying needs were. Always there, now they're critical, right? It was important before, now it's critical or urgent. So this process, the first phase of this process was to reach out in these counties. We gave this presentation, we talked, we listened, we gathered information, developing county profiles, and we can go to the next slide. So this first phase of this engagement, understanding more about the needs of the county, gathering information that is available in addition to the feedback from the county, demographic information, broadband infrastructure information that's available to the state, federal, national information, developing that county profile and making it available to leaders in the county. So one, you have a set of validated information about what the needs are, right, that reflect your needs, that you can use in your discussions with service providers. You have an idea of the points that you can leverage in that, right? Your rights of way and other things that can make it more to help incentivize that relationship with service providers. That's the tool, that is a tool for the county. That is important. It's particularly important today in the ABAF program, the Alabama program, because those are things that that ADECA looks for in the applications that it receives from service providers. So if the service provider just sent in something to Dorothy and Maureen and the team there and said, you know, we're going to provide service over here. We're going to put service in, you know, the downtown area of this town in a very rural county, right? We want to do that. And they're going to look at, did you talk to the county? Did you talk to the people in the town? Did you talk to the, what are the needs? And they said, no, we didn't do that. Not good, right? So they want to see projects where they're working with the county, the communities in the county. They want to see letters of support from the community. So there's influence. You don't get to decide, but you can certainly influence which projects and which companies can work with you in the county. Did I get that right?
Yes, and I would just say, if we're talking about the letters of support, we talk about this often with the ISPs, internet service providers, to make sure that it's not just a letter that says we need internet. We want to see how you're going to engage as an internet service provider with the county. Are you going to be doing some type of digital skills and literacy training for the community members? Are you providing refurbished devices through maybe a library program, whether it's a checkout device program, a school program, whatever it might be? That's the type of engagement that we're looking for. Any ideas that can be thought of through the internet service provider for the individual county, because you all know what's best for this county. We want to see that within those letters of support. Again, it's great to write a letter that says we need internet, we want it now, we need it yesterday. But if you're not really giving us anything, it's kind of hard to gauge what that internet service provider can do for that community.
Right. We like provider X because we told them that these communities in our county are most at need, and they're willing to build out to those communities. They have a program that's going to spur adoption in those communities. We think that's a great idea. We really are behind that.
Can I back up and Joel, he's at this meeting too, he won't shut up. I understand what you just said, and I get that. It's all great. Having internet is great, you can't use it, that's a problem. But if you have no internet, zero, full stop, getting it more important than figuring it out. I got an 8-year-old granddaughter. If I get internet, she'll start coding. I mean, it's just that crazy. And it's like, you know, I got a couple of years on most of y'all, and we have a couple of years on me. When we put water and power in people's houses a generation or two ago, we gave them water, we gave them power. We didn't have a program to tell them how to use it. Get them water, get them power. If it's a utility, that's the need. And my only comment is all of that, while that is great, is that going to stand in the way of the unserved communities, which need it, period? We'll figure it out. If I have to, I'll go down to Hollis Crossroads and I'll set up a training workshop at that unused corner there where the bank used to be, and I'll run workshops on how to use computers, and I can change all kinds of stuff. But don't let me not having all this other cool stuff keep me from putting a wire out there in my computer.
No, that's exactly right.
It doesn't get in the way of it. That's one component of it.
Yeah.
It's a component, just like being able to provide better service to a hospital like me, or to provide it for the library, so that people can come sit in the parking lot if they had to until they can get internet.
I think I can buy into that, but I just wouldn't want to see a program that's otherwise a valid, competent proposal fall because I don't have, I'm just a guy. I don't have all that other stuff. It would be awesome. And a Verizon might can pull that off because they have people they can put here. He says, I can't do all that, but don't kill the project because if we build it, they will come. If you give people ones and zeros, a lot of the rest of that will just be a self-solving problem.
Well, again, that is an aspect of it, just as a low-cost project, or I should say, services to low-income families or to families that might be on a fixed income. That's another component of this. It's not just if you can't give us a support project, we won't fund it. That's not.
And the horse is the infrastructure.
Yes, that's the right.
The cart is behind the horse.
Right.
But we have to, the horse is just going and there's no cart.
Oh, I get it. It's important, but it's not a horse.
That's right.
It's not a horse by itself.
That's right. All right, so I mentioned couple of the existing federal programs. These are programs that internet service providers will go directly to the respective federal programs, the federal agencies, the RDOF being the FCC, Reconnect through U.S. Department of Agriculture. There are ISPs in the state that have received grants through these programs and are building today many projects. I know that these have multiple rounds and they have different rules around them, but they are underway today. So these are things that you can look and see what awards are in the county, and you can get a sense if there are RDOF projects in your county to understand if people are supposed to be getting service and whether they are or not. And that is something I think that the ADECA team would want to know about. Before I go into the new federal, I'll mention the ABAP program, or the Alabama Broadband Accessibility Program. Alabama ISPs that provide service in the state can apply to ADECA for broadband projects. I think every year we make funding available, and you said it was 25 million.
Yes, it started in 2018. That allocation was $7.4 million. It went to 20 million for a couple of years, and last year's allocation was 25 million. Out of that $25 million, we were able to fund 9 projects. We had 61 applications submitted the year before. There were 131 applications submitted, and 9 projects were funded. It's incredibly expensive, and it's all about the infrastructure, like we talked about the horse, and then those other component things that come with it, with affordability, and then the partner projects and that kind of thing that comes into the rating of the projects.
So that is a competitive program, and we mentioned some of the priorities that the state puts on those applicants, and it was the difference maker, right? If there are over 60 applicants and you're funding 9, so they really did a lot of due diligence to make sure that the best projects were funded. For new federal funds, there is the ARPA fiscal, state and local fiscal recovery funds, which can be used for any infrastructure programs. I think water and other infrastructure, including broadband. There was the first tranche included middle mile.
It was a middle mile.
Right.
Correct.
And there will be a second tranche that will be also.
We don't know yet.
Don't know.
We haven't been given directive on how we can use those funds.
Right. So it may be used for additional middle mile. There is the U.S. Treasury's Capital Projects Fund, or CPF, which was $192 million. And that will be coming out this summer. So that program will be available, will be announced for this summer, and for last mile service, for service providers to apply to projects in the state.
Is that just Alabama, or is that countrywide?
Yeah, each state received at least $100 million for that.
And going back to incentives, so what you're saying is, if there's 60 people applying for it, and there's only 9 projects that's going to be funded, the more enticing that Cleburne County can be, such as we will put aside $20,000 to buy laptops to hand out or to be loaned out throughout the county, so people would have that, just stuff to put on our resume, make us look like we're really more after this funding than other counties.
Right.
That's what you're trying to say, that if there's only 9 of us, you got to put something in the pot.
There has to be a significant difference there, and with the last round of funding, I think there was a 9-point spread between the top 9 projects that were funded.
So that's just,
It's separated.
Okay.
But to add to what you were saying, and I'll get to you in a second, another thing I think is the need.
Yeah.
The level of need is
Yeah.
qualifying.
That's what I was bringing up earlier,
Yeah.
because if you have where our children at these schools, their level has fell off due to not having internet during the COVID, and they're still not called to where they're at, to me, that's the biggest need of anything.
Yeah.
Is you've got these children that are falling behind because they don't have the internet in the rural areas.
We had a bus going around with internet, setting them up, you know, we did that.
But you still have them, you know, that they didn't have that opportunity. Because I've talked with some of the teachers and they said the kids are far behind and it's all due to them not having the internet to be able to do their classroom.
Right, and it's a double spiral, because if you can't get the access, then you don't have the chance to learn the skills, and the further you go without being able to learn the skills, the rest of the world's moving on, the gap increases. It's
And now my question is, would that application have some effect if we had this backing from the teachers or from the schools showing the failing areas?
That is not a component of the application scoring as it stands right now. It's something that we hear across the state, so it's definitely good information for us to take back and to put into the county profiles to be able to use that information for future funding.
Can I ask you what areas got funded last year? Was it all major cities and big counties?
Are we talking, we're talking about the
ABAP, it's all rural, it's all unserved. I can't tell you off the top of my head where those are, but we can certainly look that information up. We can get that information for you.
I think going back to the new federal funds, and we're going to do a deep dive a little bit on the BEAD, or Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, and the digital capacity grants. So the bulk of that is the BEAD, and I think we can go to the next. Yes. So the bulk of this, at least $100 million to each state. And then in addition to that, allocations based on numbers of unserved locations. Alabama has a lot of unserved locations. This number is going to be a lot higher than 100 million. We'll know at the end of June when the announcement is made for these allocations. So I'm not even going to put a number on it, but I think a lot more than 100 million. I mentioned earlier that Alabama, through its mapping information, was in a position to challenge the FCC's map and to get greater accuracy in their map for at least, I think it was 80,000 addresses. I might be wrong, but a lot of addresses were corrected. Oh yeah, I apologize, sir. You had a question.
Oh, that's okay. The funding, is it going to go through the ISP, or does it go through the county, the city? Who is actually applying for this funding?
So it will go to the ISPs.
To the ISP themselves. So we have to partner with an ISP at some point, correct?
So yeah, so the state will set up a program, a grant program. It will have the requirements through the federal grant, or the federal program.
Yes, sir.
So a lot of good requirements, like providers, you have to deliver on your service, as you said. You have to meet other workforce requirements. You need to follow the law in all respects. The state Alabama has its own programs, so it has a history of running grant programs. The state will design that grant program. ISPs will apply to it.
And you vet those, now the state's going to vet those ISPs?
Yes.
So we don't get a low rent contractor that's coming in because he just got $11 million.
Correct.
We're only going to spend $2 million on our infrastructure, and then we got to deal with it.
Correct. And the county, this development of county level information, a more detailed kind of zoom in and look at the county really in detail to understand more accurately what are the needs within your county and other counties around the state, goes into the state plan and the proposal for those projects that have to be, that the state has the role of universal connectivity, right? So every address in the state that is unserved, the goal is to have them be passed so they can get connected to that internet service.
To answer your question, when you apply for one of these BEAD grants, you have to hire about 3 extra employees just to get counted.
Just for an oversight committee of that fiber going in the ground, the networking capabilities, and making sure that this is not a liability for the city or the county on the long term. I mean, you throw a lot of money at things, but it ends up biting us in the tail 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road, because our citizens want to know why their internet's not working.
What happened was because AT&T, big corporations like that, were milking the government dry and not providing what they were supposed to, these new programs.
So we have century, which we understand.
You understand? So what happens, these new programs, the accountability that's attached to it is just crazy. It's almost undoable. So they really are trying their best to make sure that they get what they pay for, unlike they have in the past.
Well, that's a liability and an advantage because, yes, they're trying to make sure that the funds are being allocated where they said they would be allocated for. But on the flip side, if only the larger companies can really do it because you have to hire so many extra employees. A minimum cost for an application is $120,000. So it's a pretty intense process. We've done it twice.
Yeah, and to amplify that, it's reimbursed funds.
Yes.
So nobody's getting it up front, and it's, on delivery. There is a vetting process through the requirements at the federal level, but the state will design the grant. So priorities that are in the state program align with the federal program. The state can amplify that, right? Say, we want to make sure that any provider that applies for these federal funds has talked to the state or to the county, to the folks in the county and the communities that can be part of that state grant.
Are all of Alabama's grant programs reimbursable?
Yes, they're reimbursement only, and it's at the end after it's confirmed that it passes technical test of, does it provide the speed they said they would provide? Is it where they said it would be at? Does it engineering?
All federal programs reimbursement only?
So far, they will be reimbursement only at what we're planning. We are still setting those programs up. We haven't finalized that yet. There will be one, I know we have the ARPA fund, which is a middle mile program. It's reimbursement as you go, but there are certain checkpoints and reporting that they have to do that must pass before they can receive those dollars. And that is, I believe, $80 million or so with the ARPA funds that they receive. An organization called FUND is a consortium of electric cooperatives that will build kind of a ring around the state that will give us more middle mile fiber to be able to get that to get the last mile attached to it.
Because understanding the concept is obviously not going to put money out until something has been done, but what that does is that knocks almost everyone out of any consideration except for the people who chose not to do it in the first place. I use Verizon because they're not even in this area. Verizon doesn't want to come to my house, or they would be at my house. They're not at this meeting, and they're not going to file for money. But without Verizon on board, who's got the money to put it up front? You said, it's still catch-22 from Joseph Bellman. You can't get it till you've already got it. If I had $500–600 million lying around, I just go hire Blue Street, put it in myself. I don't. So it's like the only people that have the money to do this don't care. With the Alabama power notwithstanding, y'all at least here, this is a different issue, but we can't get there from here. We would already, the four commissioners, I understand what they're saying because I'm one of their constituents and it hasn't changed. All the money's been thrown out the window so far, not one dime's come down to our part of the county. Gigafi's another one south of I-20. Nobody else has even filed a sheet of paper to come south of I-20.
So you mentioned this set of conflicting ideals, really, or values, right? So the free market, the values are, I'm going to serve where I can, and where I'm going to get a return on investment. I will extend as far as I can.
Sure.
I can stomach it in some cases, but I need to see that value. On the other hand, the state, and clearly here with its federal funds, the goal is every address, wherever it is, that's unserved, the goal is to get that address connected. And where those addresses are at the, just outside of existing network footprints, that's an easier ask for providers. And providers can come back and say, I want to extend out. But then we say, we can't get out there, it's going to cost us too much money, out in these areas. And the state says, well, we need to make sure every address is served. So then there's some work that has to be done to be able to get and make it attractive enough within a project area to include those addresses that would not otherwise be included, be it the free market or even the free market with some subsidy, right? Or some
Because unserved, while not an absolute one-to-one, unserved is almost synonymous with impoverished. Because if it was tremendously wealthy, there would already be a wire out there. So it's kind of like the very people who need it, I want it, I don't need it, I'll be able to feed my family without it. But the point is there are people that can't.
Yes.
So they're not going to scrape up enough money to put a wire out of line with it. So my point is, you're still back to unserved, more or less equals impoverished, not going to be able to do this, and the people that could do it just don't care, or they already would have it, unless the state has somehow cracked that nut, to use a horrible analogy. This is going to be the same thing where the same people, and again, at the last meeting I told you, I lived in Oxford, I was very fortunate, I had 2 service providers fighting for my money, AT&T with fiber and Sparklight with coax. It's awesome, but that's going to be more of a solution that the companies that I come up with. It's still not going to be 20 unless somehow there's a way, and I know unserved is the first priority. And I say this, it's almost disingenuous because I live there. It should be the only priority. If you have a 100 choice, don't even send the paperwork. If you have 0 choice, you're going to be the only people whose application we review because it's taxpayer money. If this was private capital money, I wouldn't care. You could prioritize it however you want. Because this is taxpayer money. The people that are getting 0 over 0 should be the only people that get entertained at this point.
Well, they are. They are. And I think there are tools. I think there are, when I use an analogy, you started.
I use a horrible one, so
I'm
you got
going
to
to say there is a nutcracker. The BEAD program does have nutcracking tools, right? So the state has the ability to determine, there will be a determination of what the, we were talking about it earlier, extremely high cost areas are, or locations, and the state can modify its match requirement from the provider. So I believe the requirement for BEAD match is 25? 25. So they can go, can go low, right? So that makes more of an incentive. There are tools that the state has. They can look at other technologies and ways to reduce the cost to get to those locations. And that's where I think adoption programs do help with that. But yeah, make no mistake, the goal is to make sure that every location in the state that is unserved, meaning that they do not have any kind of donut whatsoever, right? There's nothing there. And they get that service, or are eligible to get that service. And part of it was offering low-cost options, right? So it's not just the remote lake where, the rich people live. It's the low-cost options have to be part of that, right? So, yeah, go ahead.
What's your definition of unserved? You're saying unserved, that's somebody that has nothing, or that's somebody that don't meet the chart you got up there?
That's right. Somebody who has a service that is below 25 megabits per second over 3 zones.
So an area could have service now, but it's so poor that you still qualify.
Satellite service is not considered service, right? It's not considered a reliable broadband service. DSL would, in most cases, I think, not be considered.
Okay, I got another question too. Like Emmett was saying a while ago, we've got lines run to Ranburne, to Heflin and stuff like that. Is these companies gonna be able to tap onto that line? Who owns that line?
So I don't know, but I do know that there are those, those city to city, big, long haul connections. I know that the folks from Alabama Power were talking a little bit earlier about their middle mile project, and you guys can mention that as well. But the difference for middle mile is the encouragement for that connection to the last mile. So I think
Okay, so you're saying a private company owns those lines?
probably.
Okay, so if that's the case, then the county needs to be charging them a service fee to run it down our right of way, or they can swap off and run it down the road. They don't want to run it down because they own 3 houses down there. Is that some kind of leverage the county would have?
I think that is part of it. I think that this is something that the county has, something you have say over.
And instead of them just coming to us and saying, oh, it's great, we're gonna run this command room, but they don't give you all the details. So maybe we need to look at the fine print and like, okay, if you wanna do that, we're gonna charge you so much a mile, or you could go down this road here and do that job for free. Is that something that?
And conversely, right, to encourage providers, you can say, we're going to streamline our permitting, make it lower cost for right-of-way use, because we want you to come in.
I'm not sure.
It's a catch-22 in that situation, let me tell you why. Any corporation looks at the situation, first thing they do is they look at the median income of your county. And they go, well, if the median income's not at a certain level, we don't typically want to serve it, because throughout the United States, we have found that at this median income, they can't afford to make their bills anyhow. And then you say to them, well, we're going to charge you to pull fiber through here from this city to that city. And they go, I ain't going to fiber. So it's kind of, you got to incentivize them to a certain degree to even do it. And then hopefully you've got something enough to leverage to get them to do the rest of it. But typically, what you're going to find in the middle mile and long haul fibers, they're not interested. That's not their profile. That's not what they do. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. But for big corporations, it's all about that ROI, that bottom line. They don't care about human beings typically. And I'm not saying you guys don't care about human beings, because I believe you probably do. But typically, it's all about.
I was just saying that we had some bargaining chips. We on the right. You can't run that right away without we say.
Yeah, but see, federal legislation.
Once they start doing this, they don't know how to rule the county roads. You just say, oh, that's great.
Yeah, he's lost.
Get an extra mile, get something.
So I'd like to address this, I'm pretty sure that it's federal legislation now that you for right of ways. You can't block somebody from putting internet into right of ways anymore. You can't say you have to charge a fee, or, I mean, the co-ops just went through that in Georgia, I'm not sure about Alabama, but, we have the right of way now to go into those areas to provide internet, so. As an encouragement, that's how we're being incentivized. So that we don't have to pay fees and we don't have to pay to go through that.
Is there such thing as an internet co-op? I mean, if we created our own co-op here in Cleburne County, could we do this ourselves?
You absolutely can. I know counties that really do have it.
What do you want to
You
have?
could read my email.
Did you send me an email?
No.
I don't read my email.
No, that exact same thing, it's like, it's been in my
But
email.
I'll give it to you and see if she reads your email.
It can be done.
I'm not sure if is there electric co-op here?
No, this is our co-op, right?
Okay.
It can be done, but I promise you don't want that data.
So
There are electric co-ops that do have a fiber component. Coosa Valley Technologies, okay, Coosa Valley Electric. There's not a lot of municipal broadband because you get into the billing of it, how you're going to deal with it. That's a whole other aspect. From what I understand about municipal broadband, I don't have a whole lot of information I can provide to you on that. Not going to say it's doable, but it's not But you can't do it either, but there's a lot that goes into it.
We had a situation when they was running that cable out to Rankin, like that's a state highway. Okay, they got to a certain point, hit rock. So they just backed up and went 5 miles around the county road, they didn't come consult us. They just did what they wanted. And, you know, I didn't want to disrupt it by pitching the bid because the school was going to get fired. But at some point, the county's got to be brought into this instead of just folks doing what they want. I mean, we got all kinds of stuff running on the right of way.
I mean, again, I would think that would be for the county commission to take up with, you know, unfortunately, we're not a regulatory agency, we can't really get into that, but that's for the county commission and the city governments, localities to look at.
My understanding, you will have restriction once these grants are provided, where we don't get in a situation where people are not being provided for that under the agreement they should have paid, correct?
And that's just as Jack stated, the unserved is the first priority. That's the first priority of any of these funds is the unserved. If you have no internet to 25x3, you are the first priority.
And then projects, the funding for those projects does not come to the provider until that service is provided.
Right, and it has to pass all the tests
Yeah.
that we put it through technical testing, along with reporting, and they have to be incremental progress reporting on the projects to make sure that they're meeting the goals and objectives of that project.
So that's,
We're in the southern part of the county, served by a DSL service, and the initial federal study that was done, we weren't included because our provider said that we met the minimum requirement, which was 25.3. And that was a fallacy in its own because our internet service is almost unusable down there. So what's gonna happen to us, you know?
I think that, well, I'm going to turn to you, but there's a couple of things that we can do right away, which is checking the FCC map and see what it says today. If that is not, if it says you're served and your experience is that you are not, you can file a challenge, have the community file a challenge. It has to do it individually for those locations. I'm sure that ADECA can go back to its data that it has. I know that you guys work closely with the providers and keeping them really on target, right? And accurate in the information that's being provided.
Right.
So knowing that, I think, is being captured here. So, yes?
Your constituents can actually go to the FCC's website, run a speed test right from there, and file a challenge against.
You have to have the flyer here.
Ours is not fast enough to run speed test.
So,
And if you can't run a speed test, and we have the Alabama map also, we have a speed test that we do as well. That information is then put into the profiles, put into our database, so that we can use that information to show it as an unserved address. So you can actually, I can give you my card before I leave today. You can give us a call, we'll run the speed test, so that way that information can be captured.
Would it be beneficial to us to go out to our constituents and have them file that?
yes.
Go on the website and do that?
Yeah.
We were in a county, in one of the first 10 counties where we did this program. And they had, I guess it was Lowndes County, and they had a group of ladies, church ladies, that said on Sunday after church, we're gonna sit there, we're gonna test everybody's address in the church so that we can then use all those addresses to do the challenge with. So that's another way the county can get involved, is to do those challenges to help us out with those as well.
And it sounds like that would be a really helpful tool for this, for you all. I think you read all the slides because we're covering everything ahead of time. But I just want to go back and say one thing on the other funding coming from the federal government is around programs. And looking at these covered populations, rural, low income, seniors, individuals with disabilities, including literacy levels, incarceration, ethnic minorities, making sure that the service that is provided, first of all, is to those locations where everyone gets service, and making sure that as the sport comes, these groups are considered.
Good. Question for her. Do y'all provide like a survey that the county can conduct, or do we need to develop our own survey?
You've been reading these
You've read
slides.
it.
I was that explaining.
Hold that thought. I'll get to it in a second. There was a statewide survey that was conducted and it oversampled 4 folks in rural areas and all of those population groups to make sure that the needs were heard. So that through that survey, and it was just completed, and the data is being collected. It hasn't been analyzed yet, but it will become public.
But it would be beneficial for the county to do their own?
That I cannot answer. I don't think it's needed.
Well, and that's part of this process as well, and then we will have partner questionnaires that we're going to discuss in just a few moments. They'll also be part of this process.
All right, so technical assistance, county profiles, the drafts should be this summer. A 5-year action plan, which is essentially the state's broadband plan, has to be delivered to NTIA in order to get the money. That's the first step. The state has to provide that plan in August. So the information from these county outreach efforts is a key component of that 5-year action plan. The initial proposal is a more detailed proposal with more specific for those addresses. It identifies the addresses. Of course, the information about how much funding is available to the state will be known at the end of June, hopefully. And that will be a key part of that initial proposal. How does the state plan to spend this funding? How does the state plan to address the need for every location, every address in the state to be connected? That is a key part of that initial proposal. Details. After that, it goes to NTIA for their review. Once approved, the state can begin its grant program. There's a final proposal which lays out how the state will continue and spend all of those funds. So the timeline on that, the initial proposal, the end of the year, going into next year for the approval process, the spinning up of the grant program, we're looking into 24 and into 25 for that to get started. For the deployment part of that to be started. And then you have the digital equity opportunity plan, which is due to the federal agency in the fall. This has a public comment period. And then the capacity grants coming to the state, competitive grants that are eligible for entities other than the state, like counties. Counties working in partnership with your schools, libraries, community organizations, the human resources folks know, you know what programs exist in the county and where the needs are. That's an opportunity as well.
Kind of things looking at groundbreaking on this.
The groundbreaking for the BEAD funds will not be until really at the earliest.
2025.
Probably. But the other news is that there are other programs already underway, and that there's new funding released this year. And then there's the annual sort of Alabama Broadband fund. We kind of covered this already. What can the county do, and what are the considerations on ADECA's part for the state programs that it runs? You can count on these being a part of the state's program for its BEAD, because having the county, having the community's voice as a part of the program or as part of those projects just makes sense, right? It doesn't make any sense to not do that on so many levels. So let's go to the next. Okay, so the Affordable Connectivity Program, there's good news and bad news, right? The good news is that there's a $30 subsidy for people that can get service. You can get $100 off your device. The bad news is you have to be able to have service in order to get the subsidy, right? So if you don't have service at all, unfortunately, this isn't going to help you today. But for residents that do have service, it is a $30 discount.
And you also can, this is not just for home internet, you can use it for cell phone service. So if you have Verizon, AT&T, those type of services, this affordable connectivity program can be used for that payment as well each month.
This is a funding on that about to end,
It's slated to end in 2024. However, just with any other government subsidy program, the more people you have signed up for it, the harder it is for it to go away, is what we're being told. So that's another way the county can get involved. Again, even if it's on a cell phone service, there's somebody on the program. That counts as someone on the program. It doesn't just have to be home internet.
So this is something that can be done now, you don't have to wait for 25.
No, this is immediate, yes.
This is
you're
immediate,
correct.
yes. And
Right away.
there's handouts
Today.
on it in the back. And a lot of what we see with this is community action agencies. They get involved with the people that they serve to be able to help them to sign up for the program. The people that are eligible for the program, fixed income, Pell Grant, you receive a Pell Grant, you can be eligible for it. WIC, TANF, food stamps, anything like that, you can be eligible for this program.
Yeah, school districts,
School districts,
board.
we have free lunches for the school district, we have free lunch program, those people are eligible as well for this.
And who would you be dealing with to try to get one of these? Would it be ADECA or who?
This is with the FCC.
So you just,
Yes.
yeah, just go to this website. Well, one website, one link is to determine if you're eligible. So if you know you're eligible, just go in. You have to provide some documentation, and then you're able to get that service through that subsidy through your service provider.
So to start that website.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then the FCC challenge, which we mentioned earlier, there is instruction on your handout for that as well. Mentioned the survey conducted, mentioned that the focus of this survey was to really uncover where those needs are in a way that was statistically valid throughout the state, considering the range of rural, city, those kind of differences around the state, and also the regional aspects of the state. So a lot of thought was going into that. And here was the process that was followed. I think they wrapped up a couple of weeks ago. The last thing that I think that is an action item for counties and community organizations in the counties, as well as internet service providers. And I think that Alabama Power folks, you can choose, if you want to go in here and respond to this and let us know about assets that you want to make available to service providers through your middle mile program. You can take this survey or a questionnaire or the internet service provider one, whichever seems to make sense, but we'd love to hear that for the counties. Look at this, if there are any programs that you're aware of, any infrastructure-related assets here, any barriers and obstacles. Obviously, there are a lot. You noted. Do your community anchors have this facility access to the internet? I don't know if you have any rural health clinics or smaller, what what would be considered community anchor locations that may or may not have internet.
Would, the county owns the nursing home here in Heflin, something like that?
Put it in, yes. Nursing homes are sort of a question mark in terms of whether they qualify as a community anchor. Medical facilities are considered. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So we'd like to know where those, what the nature of the needs are and the extent of those needs. And I mentioned the service provider questionnaire.
And where are these questionnaires located?
On the ADECA website?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay, I thought they were up there. They're going up there soon?
They'll be up there soon. What I would encourage you all to do is we have an email notification list that you can subscribe to. On that email notification list, you'll get notifications of the meetings like today. You'll get information about our funding rounds that come open. You get just all types of information that will be broadcast through the notification system where you can sign up for those.
Can you narrow it down on that you just want information on this and not this?
Well, I'll tell you, since I'm the one that sends out the email notifications, you only get about one a week, depending on what's going on, and sometimes you may not get that. If we're announcing a new source of funding or one of these type of meetings, then you might not get a notification. So that we don't blast you, you don't get 15 a day or anything like that, or even a week.
We're on the list and you do that.
Yes, we're very careful with that, and we don't sell the list either.
And you're not running any like internet sales?
No,
Yeah. So,
nothing like that.
all right, so that was the informational part. I know there weren't any questions during that, but we do have time for questions.
First, I'd like to compliment the way ADECA has done this. Georgia ran into it just head over heels. They want to be the first ones with everything, and it's not as organized or as thought out as how ADECA has done. So I'd like to compliment you on that. You guys can walk down to the party versus run down to the party, and it shows in the way you've done your presentation and what you've done so far. So my hat's off to you for that. Thank you. Secondly, would you mind going back to the slide that showed all of the usage, like Netflix and gaming?
Oh, yeah, slide number 2 and 3.
Next slide number 3 or so, yeah. Where did you come up with these numbers?
That is a good question.
Because it's not what we see on our network.
I think you have to talk to Ziggy for that.
Okay. Yeah, we had some sources internally that gave us this information. I don't know offhand where they got this source was, but what do you see?
Well, for example, maybe in your urban areas, you might see that.
Okay.
But in the rural areas where we're at, the gaming way outweighs everything else.
Right.
My house too.
Yeah. And Netflix, to be honest with you, we're seeing about 7 to 10 megabits per second on the network, even in the evening time. So 30 megabits per second is not even close.
So this might be old. So you're probably right, because this is going to be higher, this is going to be lower.
Yeah, we've never seen anything like that on Netflix on our network. And to be honest with you, we've got customers that have 100 by 100 connection wirelessly, and typically we're seeing an average usage of about 7 megabits per second.
Okay.
So I think what's happening is we're looking out there, somebody's looking out there and they're going, oh, we're going to use gigabits of data. There is not a server on the planet that's going to let you connect at 100 megabits per second. So setting the standard at 100 by 100 as being the minimum that we need to offer, to be honest with you, is so far out of the ballpark, it's not even funny. Because it's not what we're seeing. And it's not even a trend that we're seeing. Even through COVID, we did not see that kind of demand anywhere, not even close. So I really appreciate that we are future-proofing this thing, but I'm afraid that we are buying a Ferrari when what we need is an F-250. You know, we're going to spend billions of dollars building something that we just need to tow our hay wagon with. You know, a true 25 by 25 megabit connection that our customers have, they never use it. Never. I've got customers who come and just go, I gotta have a 50 megabit connection. I'm like, you'll be wasting your money. You'll be wasting your money. You will never use it, and they don't.
So I appreciate that we're building this Ferrari, but I really think that whoever gave you these numbers wasn't an ISP, because they weren't measuring.
We'll check that.
And I just hate to see Alabama waste a whole bunch of money building an infrastructure that's never gonna be, you're never gonna hit 450 megabits per second. I don't care if you've got the vision geography things, it's just not gonna happen. You know, you don't even have computers that can do over a gig, you know, so it just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen on internal networks, it doesn't happen on our networks anywhere. So just a thought I'd like to bounce off of you. You know, you might want to spend your money more wisely and get more bang for your $1 billion than, you know.
Well, it goes back to what the commissioners were saying, is the areas where there's only 100 person or, I mean, gosh, 10 people in a wide radius. And that goes back, and so that's one of the questions that I have, where actually the money come down from NTIA is, has ADECA determined what that extremely high cost is for your location threshold, meaning like wireless broadband isn't applicable because it's not fiber. So BEAD money is really looking for fiber unless you can get an exemption that it's an extremely high cost, which it will be an extremely high cost in this county because you've got rock and you've got hills and you've got pines and then you've got one person in the middle of the valley for 10 miles. So has ADECA determined that, and are you making any compensations for that in any of your state allocations of funds? Because they're going to miss out on that BEAD money. You know, a county like this can miss out on that BEAD money because they're not going to drop fiber to that farmer or that fellow down in that 10-mile valley or something. And this is very common, and that's where wireless broadband comes in extremely efficiently and effectively, but yet we're not considered reliable right now in order to BEAD money. Right, so then why would we come in and build when in 2025, we're not even seen on the maps and we'll get overbuilt or not get overbuilt, whatever the case might be. So do you see the big one? I'm just wondering when ADECA has put any thought into that or come up with a number for that extremely high cost threshold.
Well, I can answer part of it.
Okay.
And say that no, that it hasn't been determined yet, because for one, the state doesn't know how much money it's coming to get, and so there's a quantifiable amount of money. There's a number of addresses, and there is work being done on a lot of that, but we need the input on the dollars before they can come up with that threshold. Really what that
So
threshold.
are you looking at?
The other thing I would say too is that there is guidance that's coming from NTIA that is helping the states do that work. So it just came out, and the states are looking at it, Alabama's looking at it.
I think I heard a number put out that to pull fiber to every single household in the state of Alabama would cost $7.5 billion, I think.
I would say that in 2021, we do have the Alabama connectivity plan that was developed, that was 2021. And at that point in time, the price tag was anywhere from $4 to $6 billion. Time goes on, cost goes up, so it could very well be in that ballpark.
Yeah, I just would encourage you to be.
Have y'all read the white paper yet from this one in regards to the raw material issues, et cetera? That's real aware of the raw material employee issues and the cost.
Yes.
Your mentioned this morning, I'm assuming it's still saying that, as I think somebody mentioned about charging for the going across there. If they use grant money, whoever uses grant money for the install, the customer is not charged from the street to the house. Did I misinterpret that this morning?
Right. Yeah, that's right. I don't envision the grant program allowing the extra charge, but they're getting a lot of money to build out to the location like that.
Because that's a concern, because I'm someone that I should pay, but that's not the argument out, it's like I'm a mile from the road, I'm really good. Okay, I read that, because that's what I get for putting my house where I put it. But that may not be the case
what these funds are meant to do, is a subsidy.
Right.
That's what it's there for.
Because otherwise, you're right, when you put it out there, the money's supposed to sign a cookie jar to get it from the street to the
And
house.
I can hear Maureen in the back of my head saying, we can give you 100% grant, and there's still some places you may not reach.
Right.
She says that very often, because that's just the nature of what we're doing. Now's a good time to have any internet service providers specifically that want to talk about your program, your business, and what you're doing, and what we can see out of Alabama Powers here. If you guys want to have something to say, maybe we can do that this time.
Okay, just to let everybody know, again, I'm in community development, and so I cover Clay, Cleburne, and Randolph County. And as far as hearing about all this, I live in Frankfort, Alabama, so I am a citizen to the state about all of this. So in saying that, I have got with our fiber team, so I am highlighting some key points from our fiber team. So this is definitely not my knowledge base. So information that they stated was Alabama is deploying fiber for electric purposes as part of a grid modernization effort. We are building fiber throughout our service territory to strengthen our electric grid reliability and resiliency. We are in a 6 of 10 year build out with plans to build more than 1,500 miles of fiber. Alabama Power is middle mile fiber, not fiber to homes or businesses. While we are not internet providers, we do work with internet service providers who want to use fiber infrastructure to build out further into our communities that they serve. So in saying that, I've been working with Clay County because TREC, they have a partnership with Point Fiber, Broadband Fiber, and so I had some questions about that. And so I got with our joint use department and our fiber department, and some things that were mentioned were we do partner with third-party internet service providers like Point Broadband, where we have fiber with the internet to help bridge the digital divide across the state. Where and when fiber is deployed is largely determined by our power delivery team, and a number of power quality factors are considered when making those decisions because, after all, our primary purpose of installing this fiber is grid reliability. We have a healthy partnership with Point Broadband that's around Lake Martin and the city of Auburn. And Point Broadband, some questions that came up were, why is TREC, Telecoms to River Electric, partnering with Point Broadband and talking about our poles as well. Point Broadband Fiber Holding LLC is a statewide, they do have a statewide pole license agreement with Alabama Power, which this agreement allows them to request new attachments on any of Alabama Power distribution poles. They can make the request for specific poles and provide a proposed attachment height for their fiber. There are policies and procedures that all attachers follow about making new attachments. Attachment requests are charged per pole fees associated with pole inspections, engineering work to assess the poles, as well as full cost of construction that results from their request. And it says Point Broadband is familiar with all of these guidelines. And also, if there is an internet service provider that would like to attach to our infrastructure, they do have to get with our joint service department, which is Sherry Morgan, and she can work on establishing a pole license agreement. And so that would be the first step for them. And so just kind of a discussion point about Point Broadband and TREC partnering together. I just want to let you know that TREC, they have a process worked out on pole replacements with the TREC system because they're an electric co-op. TREC does not have the same regulatory environment that we do at Alabama Power. So for pole attachments, Alabama Power is under the FCC pole attachments rules, and we're also regulated by the APSC. So Alabama Power recovers total cost for a pole replacement or any other modifications to our system from the party that is requesting space be made for an attachment. And it says right now we currently do not have TREC-like streamed options for this activity. So, it is based on different regulations that we have too.
So, you mentioned the person's name, so we right now don't know where all they ran fiber on their poles for their reliability and grid integrity program. Where would that be? So if an ISP wanted to contact them to find out, okay, is there a pole that has fiber as a middle mile? If we were gonna do a fiber to the home project, we obviously need a middle mile connection.
Right, the internet service provider would have to get with our joint users, and they would provide them with that information.
Okay.
We don't just give that out publicly.
Oh, no, I wasn't asking, I'm just saying, how would an ISP or someone going through this process reach out to them and say, okay, here's where we are, here's the scope of the project we're looking to do, are you a viable point of presence?
You can get with someone like me, and then I give you that contact for our fire department.
Awesome.
So all that said, Alabama Fire is willing to run this from pole to pole, or allow somebody else to run pole to pole instead of burying it?
It would, now, we run fiber, like I said, for our reliability and resilience, but that's that middle fiber. We don't run fiber to residential homes or.
But I'm saying you would run it pole to pole down the side of the road for a third party.
Well, we would do it for our purpose, but the strands of fiber are typically like 240 strands, and we only use X number of strands, so that means we have leftover fiber, and we turn around and say, hey, internet service provider, we have these fibers that are available. We're not going to light it up, but we have the infrastructure.
Y'all just selling your access.
That's it's leasing.
So to contact you to find out where this fiber's all, we're about that in the county, out in rural areas, so we could get a provider, if it's run down to that location, then another provider could contract with y'all to sell off of that pole and run it to a house, correct?
Well, I'm gonna have to get with our fire department, because that's just not my background, so that's a question that I can't
Karen,
answer.
this is the map right here where we're at.
Yes.
So in Cleburne County, you only have a small office.
That's right, that's planned for right now.
That's right.
But I think it's down in his area. Didn't you say you're down in District 4 or 3?
I'm in my code, what's that?
That's where it is. Where's it at?
This is on the Georgia line. Anniston's about as far as Alabama Power comes, then it goes to the lower quadrant of Cleveland County, which just cuts that off to Georgia line. That's not going to be my.
Mr. Hill's district, okay.
I think what you were asking, though, to jump in if I'm wrong or this gentleman will, if they've got 248 strands, and let's say they've got 2 that they're not using, an ISP would come to them, assuming it's where we need it, they would lease that to ISP company X. ISP then company has to do a connection to that, put a little central office, a little brick building like the one in Chilofini next to the church, and then they then have to run fiber to the home from there.
Yes.
That's correct.
Same as ADECA does in the city of Hackett.
Right. I think that's pretty close, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get, that's why I'm trying to ask about this, is to do exactly that.
Right.
And as they've heard 15 times now, I don't know who to call at the big players to find out, do you care? And if I do all this work, will you sell service?
So right now,
I got a map.
that map is the only thing that we have at this point in time, but we're constantly building.
Yeah.
This is the only place.
Yes, and see, that's our problem in Anniston, we actually have a middle mile in Anniston.
So if we look at all three,
So that's why I went to this morning's meeting in Anniston, and I thought, hey, yeah, when this gets connected.
You've got some of these people, it's got to step in.
That's right.
yeah,
Because we don't.
None of us individually can do it. It's got to be the IP.
And we're trying to reach out to them. It's kind of like what she was saying earlier, they kind of have to, they have to light it up, we can't do it.
Yeah. Copy of that.
So
Yes, it's
you're
all
all-
about the internet service provider.
They're not-
They've got to contact, they've got to make the reach, they've got to contact us, they've got to apply for the funds, they've got to find those unserved areas, to be able to
And
apply
the
for
only
the
thing
grants.
that we can do is, like us for, would be to reach out to some IP people and
Engage
say,
them.
look.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's what this meeting is meant to be, to start that conversation, and it's just reaching out to them.
Yeah, we need to
Unfortunately,
pay with some IP people.
So we do have high speed country, I believe I got it right. We want to give you an opportunity to speak, yes, whichever.
So, I think all you guys know me already. Brian Evans basically this is my arm point that's about to come off my body, if I can go to Alabama and start building some towers. I think we've got 7 towers now. We're all self-funded, we haven't had been able to get any grant money. So we built a bit out of our pocket. We just built a tower on top of Turkey Every Mountain. It's got incredible reach. I do want to talk to Alabama Power. I think you guys were able to buy a 365 license, wireless license. I think you own a frequency on 365, about possibly leasing that from you to get more coverage. We are just a wireless internet service company. Just a bunch of rednecks got together, figured out how to make it happen, and we're growing as fast as our budget will let us in your county. We currently have 500 and some customers, I believe. We added 12 more this week, so we are doing our best. We're not north of 20 yet. Our new tower, we just connected one of the chicken farmers up here right off the south of 20. The Love's truck stop, actually, they have fiber, and they're not happy with it. So they contacted us and said, what can you do for us? I said, tell me how fast you want to go, and I'll make it happen. So we're going to get access to their big sign, which will allow us to provide internet off that sign to the local area, to the businesses in that area. What else? We're local. You call us. You don't talk to somebody in India. You don't talk to somebody in the Philippines. You talk to someone in the local area.
Yeah, I think you and I met before about the Fruithurst area.
We sure did.
And, I've met with you and people, I met with them all, but I still don't have a situation for that whole area, and you've got fiber optic going straight down in front of it.
Right there to the school?
Right, straight through 78, for Fruithurst and for Muscat. But none of these guys can provide the service.
It's not a matter that we can provide it or not. It's not a matter it's a matter of, for us, it's a matter of how much free capital we have that we can invest. Turkey Heaven Mountain, of course, is a priority over Fruithurst for us because it reaches so many more people. You got a brand new business that makes implements there in town.
We've got two new businesses in Fruithurst.
Brian has called me every week. I'm like, Brian, let me put a tower in. Problem is, there's not enough room on his piece of property for me to put a tower there. So it's not that I don't want to. It's just a matter of priorities and how much capital we have available. We'd love to have a $1 million grant if we could get it. But so much of this, because it has been built so well to protect from the past abuses that have happened with our taxpayer dollars, they have built it so well. You're looking at $100,000 just to be able to apply for one of these grants. Well, hell, $100,000, I built 10 towers. So why would I not go build 10 towers versus put $100,000 toward getting a grant? And it boils down to how much manpower you have. I'm sure everyone in this room, including you guys, have manpower issues, trying to find people to hire. So there's a lot of challenges that are presented to just being able to deliver Netflix to someone's home. So it's not that it's not a possibility. It's just a matter of when.
So question, you said it's $100,000 to apply for a grant. So does the grant pay the $100,000 back if you get the grant?
Depends on the grant.
Yeah, it depends on
Some
the grant.
grants do and some grants don't. And if you don't get the grant, then you lose it.
So really, we don't want to pay you for it.
We've applied for 2 grants.
If we lose $100,000 money we can use in our community.
Correct, that's how we looked at it. That's how we looked at it. We said, well, we can put that money into this local community versus a grant that we may or may not get.
And I'll be bringing money right back to you as soon as you get it.
Right, and that's exactly what
Because
we
you're looking
did.
at an area, like you and I talked about, you've got the connection there. And you've got a whole area, a not school, you've got complete areas that it doesn't cover the rural, the further out area, but just the town of Muscatine, Fruithurst, and Edwardsville, you have a large group of people there. And that's why, I couldn't understand why, you wouldn't get your money back by servicing all those people.
It's on our roadmap. It's just a matter of capital expenditure. You spend so much, you put customers onto it, you get your capital back, and you go to the next one.
Because, you're right across the river from me, but you don't come across the river. Because I have no internet service, but, I have to go to I-20, to my business.
Yeah,
Which I have great service there.
yeah.
I have, CenturyLink, the internet's great, I have no complaint. But, at my home,
So you're saying in the cities that there's no internet and those limited?
I'm sorry.
It's on first.
they put her in the line, it was real big. And you have no internet service. These kids, the footers,
Oh, we get called on that.
So we're gonna go ahead and start trying to wrap things up, you guys. I know there's a great dialogue going on, and we hate to interrupt that because this is a very important pressing issue. But from these county profiles, the next step, what will happen is information we put together, as Jack showed you guys, those 6 blocks or the strategy and collaboration. This information, we'll take it back, put those questions, the surveys, the questionnaires into place, and analyze everything, and then we'll come back with a county profile. That profile will provide information of what the infrastructure looks like in the county, what assets are here, what the needs are, and then that will be used to help kind of drive what internet service providers will come to the county, and we'll give you guys that overview of that. Whether we come back in person or virtually, I don't know, that remains to be seen, but I do want to encourage you all to sign up, or sign in, if you haven't, and then also sign up for email notifications. There will be a couple of meetings that are going to be virtual meetings coming up, I believe the 3rd week of May, that you all will be invited to attend as well. So if you can attend those, we will certainly welcome you. That information will be coming out within the next few days to a week. When those meetings will be held, and there'll be 2 different options, one in the morning and then one in the afternoon, so we can hopefully help reach everyone's schedule. We want to thank you all for being here today. We know it's important. It's very important for not only you all, but us as well, to make sure we get it right. Wade says it all the time from NTIA, and I didn't know until I really started. I didn't think about it because I haven't made it at home. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We have to get it right, and that's what we're trying to do. You all know that we hear your concerns. All right, so if there's nothing else, we'd like to thank you all for being here today. Again, there's refreshments provided if you all would like to help yourself to those. And then just talk amongst yourselves. Our contact information is up here. If anyone needs my card, so you can get my phone number, I'm more than welcome to answer any questions that I can. And if not, I'll put you in touch with someone. Okay? All right, thank you so much.
I think you're back.